Safety and accident prevention concern managers for several reasons. In one recent year, at least 5,190 people died at work, up from about 4,800 the year before. Workplace accidents caused about 2.9 million occupational injuries and illnesses. Such figures probably underestimate injuries and illnesses by 2 or 3 times, and they ignore the suffering the accidents cause the employee and their loved ones. And injuries aren't just a problem for dangerous industries like construction. For examples, computers contribute to airtight sick building symptoms like headaches. And office work is susceptible to problems like repetitive trauma injuries. Reducing accidents often boils down to reducing accident-causing conditions and acts. However, telling employees to work safely is futile unless everyone knows management takes safety seriously. Employers should institutionalize their commitment with a safety policy. After inspecting a worksite in which workers were installing sewer pipes in a 4-foot trench, an OSHA inspector cited the employer for violating an OSHA rule requiring employees to have a stairway, ladder, ramp, or other safe means of escape. The local supervisor was responsible for these day-to-day inspections. Here, the supervisor did not properly do his daily inspection. The trench did cave in, injuring workers, and secondarily, costing his company many thousands of dollars. Whether you're in an IT department as a manager in a Fortune 500 company or managing an excavation or dry cleaning store, daily safety inspection should be part of your routine. As one safety recommendation put it, a daily walkthrough of your workplace, whether you're working in outdoor construction, indoor manufacturing, or any place that poses safety challenges, is an essential part of your work. What to look for depends on the workplace. OSHA operates under a general standard clause. It says that each employer shall furnish to each of their employees employment and a place of employment that are free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm. To carry out its basic mission, OSHA promulgates detailed, legally enforceable standards. Employers also follow standards from the International Safety Equipment Association and from the American National Standards Institute. The regulations don't just list standards for which employers should adhere, but how. For example, OSHA's respiratory protection standard also covers employee training. Under OSHA, employers with 11 or more employees must maintain records and report certain occupational injuries and occupational illnesses. An occupational illness is any abnormal condition or disorder caused by exposure to environmental factors associated with employment. This includes acute and chronic illnesses caused by toxic substances or harmful agents. Employers must report all occupational illnesses. Similarly, OSHA's record-keeping requirements are broad. Examples of recordable conditions include any work-related fatality. OSHA enforces its standards through inspections and, if necessary, citations. The inspection is usually unannounced. OSHA may not conduct warrantless inspections without an employer's consent. It may inspect with an authorized search warrant. With a limited number of inspectors, OSHA has focused on fair and effective enforcement, combined with outreach, education, and compliance assistance, and OSHA employer cooperative programs. Priorities include imminent dangers, severe injuries and illnesses, worker complaints, targeted high-hazard industry inspections, and follow-up inspections. In one recent year, OSHA conducted about 32,400 inspections. OSHA conducts an inspection within 24 hours when a complaint indicates an immediate danger, and with 3 working days when a serious hazard exists. For a non-serious complaint, OSHA will respond within 20 working days. The inspection begins with the OSHA officer arriving at the workplace asking to meet with an employer representative. The officer explains the visit's purpose, the scope of the inspection, and the standards that apply. The inspector can also stop and question workers in private if necessary. The Act protects each employee from retaliation for exercising his or her whistleblower rights. The employer can produce records to show compliance effort. The five most frequent OSHA inspection violations were for fall protection, hazard communication, scaffolding, respiratory protection, and lockout tagout. OSHA provides free on-site consultation programs offering confidential occupational safety and health services to small and medium-sized businesses. OSHA can impose penalties. These generally range from $5,000 up to $150,000 for willful or repeat serious violations, but can be far higher. Non-serious violations may carry no penalty. OSHA publicizes its inspection results online. Both employers and employees have responsibilities and rights under the OSHA Act. Employers are responsible for providing a workplace free from recognized hazards, for being familiar with mandatory OSHA standards, and for examining workplace conditions to make sure they conform to OSHA standards. Employers have the right to seek advice and off-site consultation from OSHA, request and receive proper identification of the OSHA compliance officer before inspection, and to be advised by the compliance officer for the reason of the inspection. Employees are responsible for complying with all applicable OSHA standards and following all employer safety and health rules and regulations, and for reporting hazardous conditions to their supervisor. Although employees are responsible to comply with OSHA standards, they often resist. The employer usually remains liable for any penalties. The refusal of some workers to wear hard hats typifies this problem. Employers have attempted to defend themselves by citing worker insubordination. In most cases, courts still hold employers liable for workplace safety violations. The independent three-member Occupational Safety, Health, and Review Commission says employers must make a diligent effort to discourage, by discipline if necessary, violation of safety rules by employees. Cited for a workplace injury, the employer may claim employee misconduct. The key here is to provide documented evidence that the employee was properly trained to do the job the right way, but didn't. But the only sure way to eliminate liability is to make sure that no accidents occur. Unsafe conditions are the main cause of accidents in the workplace. Conditions might include improperly guarded equipment, defective equipment, hazardous procedures, unsafe storage like congestion or overloading, or improper illumination that might include glare or insufficient light. Spills on the floors, tripping hazards such as blocked aisles, working from heights including ladders and scaffolds, and electrical hazard like frayed cords also could create these conditions. The main purpose of OSHA standards is to address such mechanical and physical accident-causing conditions. The Employer Safety Department and its managers should have the responsibility for identifying unsafe conditions. While accidents can happen anywhere, the worst ones occur around metal and woodworking machines like saws, transition machinery like gears, and cutting machines and conveyors. Work schedules and fatigue also affect accident rates. Accident rates usually don't increase too noticeably during the first 5 or 6 hours of the workday, but after that, the rate increases faster. This is due partly to fatigue and partly to the fact that accidents occur more often during night shifts. Many employers therefore take steps to reduce employee fatigue, such as banning mandatory overtime. A strong pressure to complete the work as quickly as possible. Employees who are under stress and poor safety climate are some of the psychological conditions leading to accidents. Accidents occur more frequently in plants with high seasonal layoff rates. Unsafe employee acts, such as running, will undo any efforts to banish unsafe conditions. There's no one explanation for why people behave unsafely. Sometimes the working conditions prompt unsafe acts, as with stressed out oil rig workers. Sometimes employees don't get the required training or learn safe procedures. One might assume that some people are just accident prone, but the research isn't clear. On closer inspection, some accident repeaters were just unlucky or may have been more meticulous about reporting their accident. However, there is evidence that people who are impulsive, sensation seeking, extremely extroverted, less agreeable, and less conscientious do have more accidents. Furthermore, someone accident prone on one job may not be so on another. Reducing unsafe conditions is the employer's first line of defense. Safety engineers should design jobs to remove or reduce physical hazards. Supervisors play an important role. Job hazard analysis involves a systematic approach to identifying and eliminating such hazards before they cause accidents. Consider a safety analyst looking at a Yale science lab with the aim of identifying potential hazards. Performing a job hazard analysis here might involve looking at the situation and asking 4 questions. What can go wrong? A student's hair or clothing could become caught in a lathe, a rotating object that catches it and pulls it into the machine. What are the consequences? The student could receive a severe injury and his or her body part or hair is caught and drawn into a spinning lathe. How could it happen? The accident could happen as a result of the student leaning too close to the lathe or walking too close to it or bending to reach for an article that fell close to the lathe. What are the other contributing factors? Speed is one contributing factor. The problem would occur so quickly that the student would be unable to take evasive action once the lathe entangled the hair or clothing. The job hazard analysis should provide the basis for creating countermeasures. For example, given the speed with which such a lathe accident could occur, it's unlikely that training itself would suffice. Instead, the lathe could be placed in protective casing and changes made to ensure that the lathe can't spin unless the student takes action via foot pedal. Employers should particularly focus on serious injuries and fatalities. Employers need to pay special attention to vulnerable workers. Although 14 and 15-year-olds can generally only legally work at jobs like a cashier and office work, 16 and 17-year-olds may take jobs like cooking and construction. In one recent year, about 550 16 and 17-year-olds were injured at work. With more workers postponing retirement, older workers often fulfill manufacturing jobs. However, there are numerous physical changes associated with aging, including loss of strength, loss of flexibility, and reduced reaction time. The fatality rate for older workers is about 3 times that of younger workers. Employers should make special provisions. For example, boost lighting levels and reduce heavy lifting. One also needs plans for dealing with health issues. Thus, in the case of cardiac arrest emergency, early CPR and external defibrillators are essential. These should be available and 1 or more employees trained to use them. Human misbehavior will short-circuit even the best safety effort. Sometimes the misbehavior is intentional, but often it's not. For example, distractions contribute to about half of all car accidents. The National Safety Council estimates that cell phone use was involved in 24% of all motor vehicle crashes. Drivers of commercial interstate motor vehicles are banned from using handheld mobile telephones while driving. At work, not noticing moving or stationary objects or that a floor is wet often causes accidents. And ironically, making a job safer with machine guards or PPE lowers people's risk perceptions and thus can lead to at-risk behavior. Unfortunately, telling employees to pay attention isn't enough. First, try to eliminate potential risks, such as unguarded equipment. Next, reduce potential distractions such as noise, heat, and stress. Then, carefully screen and train employees, as we'll explain next. The employer's aim is to identify the traits that predict accidents on the job. For example, the Employee Reliability Index, or ERI, measures dimensions such as emotional maturity, conscientiousness, and safe job performance. Employers often use work sample tests and tests of physical ability to determine if a person can do the job. Some employers conduct physical demands assessments known as PDAs. These itemize a job's physical demands, such as lifting 40 pounds an hour and working in 90-degree heat. The employer then uses this to develop more precise screening and training for the job. Behavioral interview questions can be used to reveal these types of safety precautions. Safety training reduces unsafe acts, especially for new employees. Studies by the Hartford Insurance Company found that injury rates for workers in their first month on the job were 4 to 6 times higher than for other workers. Here, the employer should instruct employees in safe practices and procedures, warn them of potential hazards, and work to develop a safety-conscious employee attitude. OSHA standards don't just require training. Employees must demonstrate that they actually learned what to do. The main aim of safety training is not to meet OSHA training standards, but to impart knowledge and skills to reduce accidents. One study found that the most effective safety training elicited employee engagement. Engaging training programs included behavioral modeling, simulation, and hands-on training. The least engaging programs included lectures, films, reading materials, and video-based training. Employers also use training vendors' online safety programs for this type of safety training. Employers also use various tools to motivate worker safety. Safety posters are one, but are no substitute for comprehensive safety programs. Employers should combine posters with other techniques like screening and training to reduce unsafe conditions and acts and change posters often. Incentive programs are also useful. Such programs pay incentives for safety-related worker behaviors, such as participating in a safety meeting, reporting a near miss, or reporting unsafe conditions. OSHA rules prohibit employers from using incentive programs in a way to penalize workers for reporting accidents or injuries. OSHA might question any safety initiative payment that is so high that the award might dissuade reasonable workers from reporting safety problems. One option is to emphasize behavioral incentives like recognition. Employers should create a culture of safety by showing they take safety seriously. One study measured safety culture in terms of questions like "my supervisor says a good word whenever he sees a job done according to safety rules," and "my supervisor approaches workers during work to discuss safety issues." According to a safety expert, a workplace with a safety-oriented culture exhibits teamwork in the form of management and employees both being involved in safety. Highly visible and interactive communication and collaboration happens on safety matters. A shared vision of safety excellence, specifically an overriding attitude that all accidents and injuries are preventable. Assignment of critical safety functions to specific individuals or teams. A continuous effort towards identifying and correcting workplace safety problems and hazards. An encouragement of incident reporting. Supportive supervisors' teams seem to have better safety records. Organizations can develop a supportive environment by training supervisors to be leaders, especially in the area of safety. Great safety policy should emphasize that accident prevention is of the utmost importance. Safety policy should reflect your organization's culture and the drive towards creating a safe work environment. Set safety goals in terms of frequency of lost time injuries per number of full-time employees. Set specific safety goals that you can achieve in your organizational environment. Behavior-based safety means identifying worker behaviors that contribute to accidents. Tenco Corporation implemented one such program. The firm selected internal consultants from among its quality managers, training managers, engineers, and production workers. After training, the internal consultants identified 5 critical behaviors for Tenneco's first safety program, such as watching your hands while performing a task. The consultants made observations and collected data on behaviors. They then instituted training programs to get employees to perform 5 behaviors properly. Employers also use safety awareness programs. Workers receive critical information regarding common safety hazards and prevention methods. Employee participation plays a central role in safety programs. According to OSHA, to be effective, any safety and health program needs the meaningful participation of workers and their representatives. Worker participation means that workers are involved in establishing, operating, evaluating, and improving the safety and health program. Ideally, the employer should encourage all workers to participate. The safety process depends on federal, state, and organization-based safety guidelines. In these types of safety engagement programs, members of a plant's employee safety steering committee investigate all safety incidents to identify cause. They recognize employee safety efforts in formal, celebratory events throughout the year. It's all about getting employees involved in the safety program. OSHA standards list exposure limits for about 600 chemicals such as asbestos and lead. Such hazardous substances require air sampling and other precautionary efforts. Managing such hazards comes under the purview of industrial hygiene and involves recognition, evaluation, and control. First, the facility safety officers, often working with supervisors and employees, must recognize possible exposure hazards. This typically means conducting plant or facility walk-around surveys, employee interviews, record reviews, reviews of government, OSHA, and non-governmental standards. Once the manager identifies a possible hazard, evaluation involves determining how severe it is. This requires measuring the exposure, comparing the measure to some benchmark, and determining if risk comes with the standard. Hazard control involves eliminating or reducing the hazard. Here, personal protective gear should be the last option. The employer must first install engineering controls and administrative controls to mitigate the hazard. Asbestos is a major source of occupational respiratory disease. Efforts are still underway to rid old buildings of the substance. OSHA standards require several actions with respect to asbestos. Employers must monitor the air whenever they expect the level of asbestos to rise to 1/2 the allowable limit. Engineering controls, walls, special filters, and so forth are required to maintain a compliant asbestos level. Employers can only use respirators if additional efforts are required to achieve compliance. About 2/3 of all drug users and people with alcohol disorders are employed. One estimate around 10 years ago was that about 15% of the US workforce has either been hungover at work, been drinking shortly before showing up for work, or impaired while on the job at least once during the previous year. Dealing with substance abuse often involves substance abuse training. Many employers test job candidates before formally hiring them, and many states have mandatory random drug testing for high-hazard workers. Yet there's a debate about whether drug tests reduce workplace accidents. In one study, a combination of pre-employment and random ongoing testing was associated with a significant reduction in workplace accidents. Some components to consider are a drug-free workplace policy, supervisor training, employee education, employee assistance, and drug testing. The Americans with Disabilities Act specifically provides that employers may require an employee who is an alcoholic or who engages in the illegal use of drugs to meet the same standards of performance and behavior as other employees. So, for example, the employer generally need not tolerate substance abuse-related behavior such as absenteeism. However, there may be exceptions, such as whether the test results involved prescription drugs or medical marijuana. It's prudent to publicize your substance abuse policy and procedures in an employee handbook. Many things about one's job can be stressful. These include belligerent colleagues, poor job security, low pay, unpredictable schedules, workplace noise, excessive workloads, inadequate control over job-related decisions, unclear expectations, and arrogant customers. Furthermore, personality affects stress. For example, type A personalities, workaholics who feel driven to meet deadlines, normally place themselves under greater stress. Human consequences of job stress include anxiety, depression, anger, cardiovascular disease, headaches, or accidents. For the employer, consequences include diminished performance and increased absenteeism and turnover. There are several ways to alleviate dysfunctional stress. These range from common sense remedies like getting more sleep to biofeedback and meditation. Employers and supervisors play roles in reducing stress. Reducing personal conflicts on the job and encouraging open communication between management and employees are important. Experts define burnout as the total depletion of physical and mental resources caused by excessive striving to reach an unrealistic work-related goal. Burnout manifests itself in symptoms like irritability, discouragement, and exhaustion. Employee depression is a serious work problem. Experts estimate that depression results in about 200 million lost workdays per year, costing employers $17 to $44 billion annually. Depressed people also tend to have worse safety records. OSHA provides an e-tool for designing computer workstations. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health provides general recommendations. Most relate to ergonomics or design of worker equipment interface. Employees should take a 3 to 5 minute break from working at the computer every 20 to 40 minutes, using the time for other tasks. Design maximum flexibility for the workstation so that it can be adapted to the person. For example, use adjustable chairs with mid-back supports and don't stay in one position too long. Reduce glare with devices such as shades over windows and indirect lighting. Put the screen at just below eye level at a distance of 18 to 30 inches from the eyes. Allow the user to position his or her wrists at the same level as the elbow. Let the wrists rest lightly on a pad for support. Put your feet flat on the floor or on a footrest. These guidelines help promote positive ergonomics. Repetitive motion disorders include carpal tunnel syndrome and tendinitis. They result from too many uninterrupted repetitions of an activity or a motion, or from unnatural motions such as twisting the arm or wrist. It affects people who perform repetitive tasks such as assembly line and computer work. Employers can reduce the problem with programs that help workers to adjust their pace of work. Studies suggest that people who sit a lot are in poorer health and need to get up and walk around about 30 or 40 minutes a day. That's why apps such as the iPhone's Health app prompt users to walk around hourly. Standing desks and slow treadmills are other options to promote this behavior. Employers can take these steps to prevent the entry or spread of infectious diseases. Monitor the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention travel alerts. Encourage employees to receive immunizations. Provide daily medical screenings for employees returning from affected areas. Deny access for 10 days to employees or visitors who have had direct contact with a suspected infected individual. Tell employees to stay home if they have a fever or respiratory symptoms. Clean work areas and surfaces regularly. Practice hand hygiene and make sanitizers easily available. Stagger breaks. Offer several lunch periods to reduce overcrowding. Smoking is a serious health and cost problem for employers. For employers, costs derive from higher health and fire insurance, increased absenteeism, and reduced productivity. A manager may deny a job to a smoker as long as smoking isn't used as a surrogate for discrimination. Federal laws don't expressly prohibit discrimination against smokers. However, if a majority of a company's smokers also happen to be minorities, anti-smoking activities could be viewed as discriminatory. 17 states and the District of Columbia ban discriminating against smokers. Most employers these days ban indoor smoking, often designating small outdoor areas where smoking is permitted. Many states and municipalities now ban indoor smoking in public areas. With vaping laws in flux, employers should check the status of their local and state laws. OSHA suggests prohibiting both tobacco smoke and e-cigarettes from the workplace. And while marijuana use is still illegal by federal law, it's legal in about 26 states. Enterprise risk management is the process of assessing exposures to loss. Companies face a wide variety of risks, only some of which are OSHA-type direct risks to employees' health and safety. Others include, for instance, natural disasters, financial, and risks to a firm's computer systems. Human capital risks rank high. These include safety risks, but also, for instance, risks from unionization and from inadequate staffing plans. How the employer manages a risk depends on the type of risk. For example, internal preventable risks arise from action within the company and include things like employees' illegal conduct or workplace accidents. Employers manage these risks with methods such as codes of conduct, disciplinary procedures, and safety rules. Strategy risks are risks that managers accept as a part of executing their strategies, such as the risk a banker takes to borrow defaults. Employers manage some strategy risks with independent experts, like those who assess insurance risks, and with in-house experts like risk managers who help oversee banks' loan profits. External risks come from outside the company and include things like political and natural disasters as well as terrorism. Managing external risks might involve methods like scenario planning. Violence against employees is an internal preventable risk and a huge problem. According to OSHA, homicide is the fourth leading cause of fatal occupational injuries in the United States. Customers are often the perpetrators. Many other assaults involve coworkers or a current or former partner or spouse. Risk Management magazine estimates that about 86% of past workplace violence incidents were anticipated by coworkers who had brought them to management's attention prior to the incidents actually occurring. Yet management usually did little or nothing. Human resource managers can take several steps to reduce workplace violence risks. Heightened security measures are the first line of defense, whether the violence is from coworkers, customers, or outsiders. With about 30% of workplace attacks committed by coworkers, screening out potentially violent applicants is the employer's next line of defense. Obtain an employment application and check the applicant's employment history, education, and references. This should cover all workers and anyone who may come in contact with company personnel. You can also train supervisors to notice the clues to potentially violent behavior. Workplace security relates to protecting employees from internal and external risks. This often starts with facilities security. In simplest terms, instituting a basic facility security program requires 4 steps: analyzing the current level of risk, and then installing mechanical, natural, and organizational security systems. At one university, threat assessment team members meet periodically to review potential threats to university students and employees. Such teams ideally start with an analysis of the facility's current level of risk. Here, start with the obvious. For example, what is the neighborhood like? Is the facility adjacent to rail yards or roads? Does your facility house other businesses or individuals that might bring unsafe activities? Having assessed the potential current level of risk, the employer then turns to assessing and improving natural, mechanical, and organizational security. Natural security means capitalizing on the facility's natural or architectural features to minimize security problems. For example, do too many entrances hamper controlling facility access? Mechanical security is the utilization of security systems such as locks, intrusion alarms, access control systems, and surveillance systems. Here, make sure to train local employees on how to use these security devices. Finally, organizational security means using good management to improve security. For example, it means properly training and motivating security staff and lobby attendants. Ensure that the security staff has written orders that define their duties, especially in situations such as fire, hazardous material spills, medical emergencies, suspicious packages, civil disturbances, and workplace violence. Security is as much an employee selection problem as a mechanical one. The employer can take several steps to protect its employees and physical assets. These steps, now familiar at many workplaces, include the following: Screen the identities of everyone entering the premises. Check mail carefully. Identify in advance a crisis organization that can run the company after a terrorist threat and under what conditions you'll close the company down. Institute a process to put a crisis management team together. Prepare evacuation plans and make sure exits are well marked and unblocked. Designate an employee who will communicate with families and off-site employees. Identify an upwind off-site location near your facility as a staging area for all evacuated personnel. Designate in advance several employees who will do head counts at this staging area. And establish an emergency communications procedure. Data protection and cybersecurity are specialized areas requiring expertise. However, there are some basic guidelines to follow. First, data security is everyone's responsibility. IT installs firewalls and password systems. Second, old data is bad data. In other words, destroy unneeded old personnel data unless it's absolutely required. Third, encrypt. This includes data in laptops employees carry with them. Fourth, monitor. The IT staff should periodically assess cyber risks. To prepare for potential disasters, the Human Resource Department should develop a plan. Such plan should cover early detection of a problem, methods for communicating the emergency externally, and communications plans for initiating an evacuation. An initial alarm should come first. The employer should follow that with an announcement providing specific information about the emergency and letting employees know what action they should take. The employer also needs plans for business continuity in the event of a disaster. The employer can designate a secure area of the company website for emergency employee communications, listing such things as expected hours of operation, facility opening schedules, and alternative work locations. This includes establishing a command center and identifying employees considered essential.